He's going to link it away for the Abomination. The Unchained Abomination is there. Shavar's on the field. That's 5,000 points of damage.
If you've been playing Yu-Gi-Oh! In recent times, you might be familiar with the archetype Unchained. In the summer of 2023, the deck saw a huge surge in popularity after receiving a powerful new wave of support in the main set Duelist Nexus. It then became tier 1 for many months thereafter, and won YCS for Richmond, as you just saw. What some players might forget, however, is the fact that Unchained wasn't always relevant before this. It had existed in the TCG since 2019, a whole 5 years before Dune, and had largely only been Rogue. Unchained represents something many Rogue players dream of, a Rogue deck that becomes meta. The reason why I emphasize Unchained in this introduction is because its transition into power was very clean. What was once a Rogue deck grew to become a very balanced, top-tier contender. I mean, sure, there are some unfair elements to the Fiend-based stratagem. Gryphonlock is a key example, though you can't really blame them for that card existing. Even so, people would agree that Unchained is an honorable matchup. Yet, you wouldn't be able to say the same for other Rogue decks turned into threats in the past. Many Rogue decks have had the chance to become meta throughout Yu-Gi-Oh's history, though with caveats. Some became too dominant and or toxic for the format, some received support that alienated the deck's original ideology, and some received single cards that were so polarizing in strength that their whole stratagem became warped around that idol. In this video, I want to talk about 3 cases to prompt discussion on what we could consider the gold standard when it comes to producing legacy support in Yu-Gi-Oh! I'll cover 3 different archetypes, the first being Spiral, the second being Super Heavy Samurai, and the last being Praying Kids. By the end of this essay, I hope we can understand how tricky it can be to enable a Rogue deck to become meta in a way that is reasonable to their existing audience and to newer pilots. Let's get on with things. Spiral is a TCG exclusive archetype that debuted all the way back in 2016. Makes you feel kind of old, huh? The spy theme archetype, upon completion of its initial waves of support, had proven itself as a rather directionless and lackluster toolbox rogue stratagem. I mean, sure, everything is going to look pale in comparison to Zodiac, but Spiral genuinely was clunky. Machine Dupe was probably your best play, and it didn't always end on a whole lot. Furthermore, there was no consistent way to get out Master Plan at the time and abuse its insane effect. Thus, it was a complete surprise when the OCG, only 4 months later, released this. There's a reason why you'll occasionally hear players referring to groundbreaking new legacy support as the double helix for its respective archetype. Spiral's New Link 2 no clickbait was literally game-changing. After its release, the archetype immediately shot up to tier 0 status. Look at this graph and tell me something doesn't look wrong. Now, you might think for a second that there is some good in this. A Rogue deck had its shot to become meta, as we wrote in the title. But Spiral was incredibly toxic on power. The combo deck was focused solely on setting up a massive end board full of negates and indestructible monsters. During a period where we lacked board breakers like Dark Ruler, Droplets, and Lightning Storm, going second was near impossible unless you open a draw. Spiral represents a case of a Rogue deck becoming meta, but becoming too strong at that and promoting an unenjoyable playstyle. It's funny I actually pulled out the Makes You Feel Old card for Spiral because Super Heavy Samurai actually was in the game for much longer. This archetype was released in 2014, believe that, 2014? Back when I was only in high school. The deck's whole gimmick was centered around utilizing its monster's defense points instead of attack points to swing at your opponent. Though Super Heavy did receive multiple waves of support given its status as an anime deck, it maintained Rogue status in part due to its inability to run spells and traps and its lack of a strong end board. Fast forward some, 9 years later, and a set of new cards finally pushed the Mechanized Warriors into the spotlight. Cyberstorm Axis granted Super Heavy Samurai 2 insanely strong Pendulum monsters that, when combined with a select few cards from years prior, allowed some nasty combos to be produced. The format was short-lived, but most competitive players will agree that the deck was a formidable threat. Again, you might think that this is a good thing. A Rogue deck became meta. But let me remind you of a phrase I said only moments ago, quote-unquote, when combined with a select few cards from years prior. The new Super Heavy Samurai support vastly outclassed everything that came before it. Only 3 to 4 older cards were used, the rest were ignored in favor of the new wave. And the deck sacrificed its old identity in the process. What was once a deck boasting a wall of inverted attackers became a generic combo deck intent on setting up multiple Omni Negates every game. So, While Super Heavy Samurai got his chance to be meta, it became soulless, a shell of what it once was. And I dare say that this isn't what you hope for when your rogue deck becomes meta, especially if you grew to love that archetype for what it was before, rather than what it devolved into. Some of you might recall Din Kabui winning YCS Milan with Prank Kids. This was back in 2018, only a month after Prank Kids debuted in the main set Hidden Summoners. Though this event was incredibly exciting to see, Prank Kids actually remained rogue for some 2 years after that fateful December. The deck, as it was back then, had consistency issues in spite of its relatively threatening end board, and had seemingly seen success only due to people being unprepared for it. Fast forward 2 years later, however, the archetype received an incredible Link 1 in the form of Meow Meow Moo. Prank Kids immediately shot up to the top of the metagame. It suddenly had a much more reliable way to trigger its main deck monsters effects, and a fixed proxy for its tribute requirements. The deck wasn't tier 0, though it definitely took up a ton of representation in the format. Let me say this video's iconic line again, you might think that this sounds like a good thing. A rogue deck became meta. However, Prank Kids more or less became centered around Meow Meow Moo. The archetype hinged on the Link 1 for its meta relevancy. There is a reason after all why the deck completely fell off the radar after Meow Meow Moo was banned a year or so later. Maybe I'm wrong for saying this, but I personally just don't enjoy such polarizing card design when it comes to legacy support. Sure, there are some archetypes out there that literally only need that one card to have their shot, but otherwise, having a full wave of strong support like Unchained seems to be the more well-rounded approach. We can only hope that Konami has learned something from their previous misgivings. Many rogue players' dream is to have their deck take center stage and have a shot at being meta. Indeed, this has happened to many archetypes in the past, though some instances have been a bit more imbalanced than others. Legacy support, after all, is hard to craft. Everyone is going to have their own opinions on how such cards should be designed, though I personally would argue that they hopefully do not promote overly dominant or toxic playstyles, that they don't invalidate the rogue deck's identity, and that no single card is too overbearing. With this discussion, it's possible there are details I missed here or there, and or overarching points that could be brought up on the topic. If you catch anything of the sort, please let me know in the comments below. Remember to like and subscribe, especially if you enjoy this type of content and want me to make more. Otherwise, here's to rogue decks that become meta.